everyone, Pam Gregory. I'm going to be talking to you today about the first half of May and the new moon that we have coming up in Taurus on the 4th. Now, we're still in this very strong period of cardinality, continuing from late April. And if we include Eris and Chiron, they're not strictly planets, but nevertheless, if we include them, that gives us 6, what I'll broadly call planets in cardinal signs. We have Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn, a cardinal sign, and then Mercury, Venus, Eris, and Chiron in Aries. So it still has this feeling of dynamism and action. And that is going to kind of be accelerated by Mars, that I'll talk about in a moment. What might steady the ship very slightly is on the 7th of the month, Mercury moves into Taurus and Venus follows on the 15th. Venus is the ruler of Taurus, so that might steady things a little. But as I say, Mars, you might remember me saying last time, moved out of bounds on the 20th of April. And it will stay what is called out of bounds until the 12th of July. Now, what out of bounds means is that normally planets will orbit within a 23-degree point north or south of the ecliptic, but when they go beyond that, it is called out of bounds, and the symbolism of the planet tends to act in a more extreme or a more out of control way. So now Mars is in Gemini, so this is going to activate the mind, activate our communication. Mars is in myth, god of war, so we have to be careful that it isn't angry words or sharp words. We have to be very aware of that. And it will stay in Gemini until the 16th of May and then moves into Cancer. And I'll be talking about that next time. But there's this kind of greater sense of agitation, if you like, with Mars being out of bounds through this whole period. Now, what reinforces that theme as well is at the last full moon in Libra, we have the Sun at the midpoint, the Sun at 29 of Aries at the midpoint of Eris and Uranus. Now, at the new moon, that has been replaced by Mercury. Mercury is at the midpoint of Eris and Uranus. And Mercury rules Gemini, and Mars is out of bounds in Gemini. So you can see how these themes reinforce each other of angry words, eruptive words, combative words. Uranus is always the planet of revolutions, also the planet of awakening, of course, but Eris has a very similar symbolism to Uranus, is that it often feels slighted by the elite, not important enough, and therefore rebellion surges. So that's all going to be happening. The Mercury midpoint of Eris and Uranus is round about this new moon that we have on the 4th. Just before I talk about that, just want to remind you that the big configurations that we're seeing through May are a continuation of what I've talked about in the last couple of videos. We have this very strong Saturn, Pluto, South Node conjunction, also conjunct their own planetary South Nodes as well. And I've talked about what that means in the last couple of videos, so check those out. But it's really about centralized, vertical, top-down power, law and order. Strong government from the centre. The other aspect, which will be ongoing until October, and again I've talked about this previously, is Jupiter square Neptune. Jupiter in Sagittarius square to Neptune in Pisces, which has a much more boundless, ethereal, inspired, spiritual aspect of anything is possible. So very, very different energy. Now, just to say that therefore, between 20 and 23 degrees of the cardinal signs is being very, very activated at the moment. That's where Saturn and Pluto are, 23 of Capricorn. So if you have anything in the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, they're going to be activated by conjunction, square, or opposition by Saturn and Pluto. Equally, at the moment, if you have anything at 23 degrees of the mutables, Jupiter is at 23 of Sagittarius, so the mutable signs are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. Jupiter, by conjunction, square, opposition, is going to activate those planets for you. And also Mars in Gemini, another mutable sign, for the first week of May is going to be travelling through 20 to 23 degrees of Gemini. So these degrees are highly activated. Now, Jupiter's going to retrograde back before 20 degrees Mars is going to be moving on. But nevertheless, Saturn and Pluto are going to be kind of grinding away in that last 10 degrees of the cardinal signs, and getting into 2020 as well. We also have Neptune in 2020 getting to 20 degrees of Pisces, mutable sign. So that's going to be joining this party of the last 10 degrees of that sign. So just be very aware of that, because those are the degrees that are being very, very activated in your own chart. And I can't go through the detail of the symbolism of every one and the potential manifestation of how it's going to hit your planets, but hopefully many of you know enough to work that out for yourselves, because it's going to be a very, very strong time in that regard. Then we have our new moon. We have our new moon at 14 degrees, 10 minutes of Taurus. It's on the 4th of May. It happens at 3:45 p.m. Pacific and 11:45 p.m. UK time. Now, a new moon is always a new beginning, so see where this falls in your chart, because this can be a new seed that is planted for something else to grow. Now, as well as the aspects I've mentioned, and also these bigger Saturn, Pluto and Jupiter, Neptune ongoing aspects, the only really main aspect to mention, apart from those, at this new moon is there's a wide sextile between the Sun and Moon in Taurus and Neptune at 18 degrees of Pisces. Now, Taurus in itself is the Earth. It is the sign that most signifies Gaia, fixed Earth. It's about beauty, abundance, colour in nature. I always think of the Empress in the Tarot when I'm talking about Taurus, all that sort of fertility and fecundity. And when this sextile to Neptune is in operation too, it reminds us of this spiritual element in nature, this sense of connection, which I'm going to be talking about a lot. So try and find time to be in nature at this new moon, round about 12 hours to either side of this new moon. Meditate in nature. Neptune can give us this sense of divine connection, of sacredness of nature, of just everything being one. And it can give us a sense of creativity and awe and reverence for all that is. So at this new moon, it's always very helpful, as you know, to set a new intention for yourself and your own life that you want to manifest, but also consider setting a new intention for the Earth. The Earth needs our help now. And therefore, what can you do practically? I'll be talking about other things later in this video that we might consider doing, but you can do practical things. You can join a sustainability group. You can pick up rubbish on your beach. You can avoid plastic packaging. You can lobby your supermarket to stop using plastic packaging. There are many, many things that we can do in a practical sense, but consider the Earth as this another new beginning, if you like, because of this new moon in Taurus. Just to say as well, one other aspect I might just mention, Neptune, new moon in Taurus. Jupiter in Sagittarius will be trining that Eris-Mercury-Uranus conjunction. So what that can do is whatever rebellion is happening at the time, Jupiter in Sagittarius can give it more meaning, or put it in a bigger context, put it in a bigger picture for whatever we're rebelling against at the time. But it will tend to be as a continuation of many, many months, bottom-up revolution versus top-down repression. That will be the continuing feeling, and it keeps appearing in different forms at every lunation, but nevertheless it's the same theme repeating. Now, I just want to spend a bit of time now talking about another aspect of Uranus in Taurus that I haven't really expanded on this fully before. Uranus initially entered Taurus back in May 2018, and it re-entered Taurus this March, and it will stay in Taurus for another 7 years. Now, they are uncomfortable bedfellows. Uranus in myth rules the sky. It is the sky in ancient myth. It's also the ruler of Aquarius. So this is very much the mental function. It's intellect, it's clarity, fixed air. It's often considered to be the higher octave of Mercury, Mercury, the planet of the mind. But the way Uranus operates, it's super fast, but it isn't so much intuitive because that's Neptune's realm. It's more kind of flashes and downloads and sudden inspiration and seeing things from a different point of view via your mental function. Now, Taurus is very different. Uranus is also, as well as the speedy side, we always get speed with Uranus, its movement is always upwards. So it's very linked, for instance, to aviation. It's also very linked to new technology, future-oriented. How can we make it faster, better, more expansive? That's always the impetus. So if we look back in history, and actually in my first book, in the chapter on Uranus-Pluto, I covered many of these developments. But whether you go back to the Gutenberg printing press or the development of the telephone or the internet or whatever, we've had a series of waves of Uranian innovation, always linked to technology, very future-oriented, never enough, faster, better. Taurus is completely different. Taurus is fixed earth. Taurus wants to keep things as they are. With Taurus, you connect to the simple, predictable rhythms of the earth. And I wrote quite a lot in my first book about all these amazing connections we have to those rhythms of the earth, how the circadian cycle is very linked to many of our biomarkers, how our uric acid levels and our blood pressure and many other measures change with the movement of the moon and the apparent movement of the sun. We're very locked in, if you like, to those things. So Taurus wants to keep things steady as they are. As I mentioned, it's to do with beauty, abundance, dazzling biodiversity that is being very challenged now by pollution and climate change, etc. And we're seeing species being reduced in numbers very dramatically. But this is really what I feel when I think about Taurus and Gaia. It is divine intelligence at work. Whether you take the insects and the birds and the bees and the plants and the trees and animals and ourselves, it is a whole interlocking series of intelligences and consciousnesses, if you like, coming from one originating divine intelligence. And if we take one layer of that out of the bees go extinct, then this is at our peril in terms of how ecology and that biodiversity works for us on the earth. So there's this tremendous feeling of divinity that I have to see, that inspiration of how nature is so intelligent in all aspects of life on Earth. Somebody once said to me, wouldn't it be great if we could make a machine that took carbon dioxide out of the Earth and replaced it with oxygen? I said, well, that's a tree, and boy, do we need them now more than ever, because a mature tree can produce enough oxygen for a family of 4 on an ongoing basis. In Japan, they know the benefits of being in nature, and they talk about forest bathing, that they're going forest bathing. A piece of research was conducted recently, people who live in urban environments, and they asked these people to go to a local park just for 20 minutes a day, and their blood was taken before and afterwards. And it was discovered that there was a significant drop in cortisol, the stress hormone, just after 20 minutes being in a park, being in nature. And that cortisol level dropped even further if the time was extended to 30 minutes. It's interesting that, sadly, we have quite a surge in knife crime in London at the moment. One of the reasons I've heard that's been given for that is a lack of green space in some of those very dense areas of London. So we need to keep this sense of connection to nature. It is absolutely vital to do that. Now, Taurus is ruled by Venus, so it's a about a connection to the heart, and it's also a connection very much to the senses. With Taurus, your senses are heightened. Your sense of smell and touch and colour and hearing, everything is heightened with Taurus, particularly the sense of touch. So it would be very useful, actually, if people are interested in this, to read a book called Body Electric and another book called Earthing. The whole science of earthing and groundology, I think, is very well known now. It's about having bare skin on the earth, whether you're sitting on it or, your bare feet on it, and just your body will naturally take in the healing ions of the earth, and that will have a significant effect on many of your blood markers, biomarkers, etc. There's a lot of detail on the groundology.com website about that. So this connection with the earth is direct and physical, but it also has mental, emotional, and I would argue very spiritual benefits. That we feel that sense of divine connection, we feel that sense of divine intelligence. I have really busy days, but every day I will connect to nature. I just have to, even if it's raining or snowing, I have to be in nature every day, because as an astrologer, I feel I'm working with divine intelligence every day. So I need that reboot. I need to actually sense it and be in it. So, and we rely on the earth for our food supplies, for our health, but also, as I say, very importantly, for this sense of spiritual well-being, let's call it. Now, Uranus is very different from that. It has no sense of heart. It has no sense of connection to the earth in that way. It's man-made technology, and therefore it does not have that sense of divine intelligence because it's man-made. It hasn't come directly from nature. And therefore it can bring some wonderful inventions. I think Uranus and Taurus will bring us a lot of brilliant medical inventions, particularly those connected to vibration. They're using sound waves, sound healing for to treat neurological diseases now in medicine, a new area for them, and also magnetism. Uranus is the planet of magnetism. But let's look at what has been happening since Uranus entered Taurus, because with this radical extreme planet, Uranus, entering this steady, keep things as they are, Gaia sign of Taurus, astrologers anticipated that there would be many extreme earth changes. Well, for sure, we have extreme climate change, there's no doubt about that, but also very radical shifts. I've talked about this before, how the Schumann resonance has been very steady since its discovery in the 1950s at 7.83 hertz, and we know that that is the level at which in the past, or up to now, humans have, at 7.83 hertz, that is the level of their alpha waves, where they have a sense of well-being and contentment and creativity. That recently has been peaking over 20 times. It's beyond 130 hertz, peaking quite radically and wildly. The magnetic North Pole is now moving, I believe, at about 7 kilometres a year, and GPS companies are having to update their data more regularly because of the speed of that movement. So things are changing very rapidly. So what happened last time Uranus went into Taurus? Particularly thinking about Taurus as natural resources, as agriculture and our food supply. Well, from that time, 1934, more intensive agriculture came in many countries. In the US, certainly, moisture-retaining plants were uprooted to make way for crop sowing, etc., more intensive agriculture. But what happened, because nature had put those moisture-retaining plants there for a very good reason, was it ended up in many years of what is known as the Dust Bowl. From Texas to Nebraska, nothing could be grown. It was just dust and wild dust storms and high winds. Uranus is also connected to wind. In China, at the same time, there was a famine and 5 million people died. Now, Uranus in Taurus, I think, will go two ways. It can be increased engineering of our food. It can also be a big move towards organic food, going back to the basics. Taurus, growing things simply, naturally, organically going back to the basis as nature intended. So I think there'll be quite a split. But where Uranus invents brilliant, genius, very quick new technology at the cost to nature, this is where we can get into difficulty, I think, because there's a separation, there's a disconnection from that divine intelligence, from Gaia. And people now feel that they can watch a movie or put on their headphones and experience nature in a virtual reality, but that does not have the divine intelligence connection to it because it's man-made. And I really feel this very passionately in my bones. Recently I did a dowsing course, and quite a few of us, more than a dozen of us, doing this. And there's one exercise we were asked to dowse the aura of this big, beautiful oak tree with dowsing rods, and we all did it. And I got about 7 feet as the aura, 7 feet radius. And we were then asked to send love to the tree for about a minute. And I could see some people think, how do you send love to a tree? Well, just imagine that you're sending love to the tree and then remeasure the aura. And the aura had doubled. The aura had literally doubled. And I'll never forget that. The power of love, the power of focus, the power of sending the highest vibration to a tree can make that much difference. So in this fast-moving world where it is very easy to disconnect from nature because we get caught up, and ironically, of course, I'm bringing this message to you via a computer and you're looking at it on your smartphone or your tablet or whatever. Over the next 7 years, we are going to be asked with Uranus and Taurus, what are your values? What do you value? And by the end of these 7 years, many of our values will have changed, for sure. So what you value is where you put your attention day to day. And where you put your attention is where you put your energy. So are your days, particularly in our modern day life, just filled with seeing your world through technology? Or do you take time out to connect to nature and put energy and love into that? Send love to the plants, send love to the birds, send love to the animals, send love to the trees. I'm an unashamed tree hugger. So I'm very passionate about this in terms of nature sustaining us and without a big cost to nature via what's coming. And I'm also, as an astrologer, obviously I have an eye on what's coming up, and if I look down the time tunnel to December 2020, I can see that Jupiter and Saturn are going to be moving into Aquarius. We're having a big shift into air signs from Earth by some of those outer planets. Uranus is in Taurus. Pluto will also be moving into Aquarius from about the end of 2023 onwards. So we're going to have Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto. This is the setup for that right now because Uranus rules Aquarius. So how we live, where we put our energy and our focus, how we determine what we value in our lives will also, because this is the setup time, determine how those planets in Aquarius play out. And every single one of us contributes to that evolution of how that unfolds. It's not predetermined. It could unfold in a myriad of ways, depending on our level of consciousness. And love is the highest vibration. So certainly we will have many brilliant, genius technologies, but we mustn't be so clever to feel that our technology is superior to the divine intelligence of nature. If you'd like to read more about this theme, I talk about this more in my monthly newsletter. They come out on the last day of each month, so it'll be the May issue. If you'd like to get more information about my books, my tutorial videos, etc., just check out my website. And if you don't know where some of these aspects fall, where the new moon at 14 of Taurus falls, whether you've got planets at 20 to 23 degrees of the cardinal signs. Just you can download a free birth chart from my website and then just check out this link above. That will take you to my store and you'll get a 2-part video series which will explain how you can use these updates in a much more meaningful way for you and your life. So go send love to the trees. Thanks so much for listening. Bye for now.